we don't.
Okay, he said he may try to zoom in. So, roll call.
Josh McCarty,
Here.
Josh Turner,
Here.
Pete Ketchum,
Here.
Jim Eiston,
Here.
Rob Henderson,
Here.
Jonathan Myers.
Here.
John Myers is absent.
Pete, would you lead us in the invocation?
Sure. We all take a moment to pray. Dear God, our Heavenly Father, we're grateful this day to be able to meet it as a council, elected officials, department heads, to take care of the county business. We pray for that presence at this meeting, that we'll make good decisions, listen to the proposals and information presented. Pray that that will heal our country of the ongoing pandemic and civil unrest. We pray for these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have a few changes to tonight's agenda. We're going to, under C, right underneath the second reading of the GO bond, we're going to add C1, and we're going to have Dan Hedden explain the gap situation to us. So we're going to move him from other business at the end of the agenda to C1. Under item D2, approval of the budget hearing minutes. We're going to remove those. We don't have this quite finished yet. Item 12, under the consent agenda, is a transfer for the coroner. The amount, I think we had that. Yeah, we have that on our desk. So that's going to go on the consent agenda. And let's see. Under old and new business, above the fiscal plan and Mike Broder's update, I want to add a jail update. So we'll make that G1A. Wes is here to give an update on that. And I believe that's it.
Josh, I'd motion to accept tonight's agenda as amended.
A motion from Rob, seconded by John T. Any other changes or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, public comments.
I have a quick comment for the council. I've had the pleasure of listening. My name's Ron Deere. I've had the pleasure of listening to the council on Zoom. And there is one technical issue that you need to be aware of. Those of you who like to lay back in your chair, you cannot hear you on Zoom, no matter how hard, how high you turn it. And with the mask on, just be conscious, if you will, if you're not already, especially the soft-speaking people on the council. I know there are a few of those. Just speak up a little bit more so people can hear you and understand it. This mic is very hot and very well understood, but it's just difficult to hear what you're saying.
Okay, thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Thank you all for coming. Looks like we have a full house tonight, so. All right, moving on. We're going to have our public hearing for the additional appropriation of the bond proceeds of the county's GO bond. So I am going to officially open that public hearing at this time. And I will accept comments if anyone wants to comment on that. Do we have any presentation for that, or was Brian going to present?
He's on Zoom if you want.
Oh, normally it's just for comments.
Okay.
This is for the next one.
All right, last call for comments on the GO bond. All right, I will close the public hearing for the general obligation bond. Does the council have any discussion or questions? Okay. So moved.
Sorry.
Motion by James, seconded by Pete. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion passes. Next will be the approval of ordinance 2020-03, ordinance of the Johnson County Council authorizing the issuance of GO bonds for the purpose of providing funds to acquire vehicles, acquire and install certain equipment, complete certain projects, and make certain improvements and renovations and pay the costs of issuance of the bonds.
What did you guys just approve?
Yes, officially we did. It was listed as two separate,
One was just public comments, no motion needed, and now we're doing this, so.
So I guess back up and let's just make sure that Jim was moving to approve the ordinance 2020-03 and Pete is seconding.
yes, items B and C were voted.
And then everybody
Yes.
voting yes on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Was that, we had a unanimous vote on that? Yes. All right, very good. Is John on Zoom?
John,
John Meyer?
no.
Okay, I just don't want to miss his vote. All right, so the approval of the GO bond passes 6-0. It's official. All right, good on that. So next item will be Gap and Dan Head. Dan?
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me. In the next couple weeks, your audit will be complete and the county will have a audit unlike any of your recent audits. It'll be in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP. And so while the finish line is near and the report will be ready very soon from the State Board of Accounts, I wanted to take a moment and just talk about the starting line and a little bit of the journey and some of the things we found along the way. So we don't expect any surprises in the issuance of the report. And when the report is issued, I can come back and go through it with all of you page by page or in any form you need me to explain everything. But I wanted to talk about where we started, which the last time you saw me was really at the outset of this when we had more questions than answers in terms of how long it was going to take and what was the effort going to be involved and how much we were going to be able to rely on from the auditor's office. And we put a budget in front of you and I committed to come back and tell you how it went. So now that we're towards the end, we know with pretty good certainty what this thing's going to look like. It looks like we're going to deliver it probably between 20 and 25% under budget. That is primarily driven by a couple things. One is, as we got to work with the staff more and more, we ask for something, it's there in the format that we need it, usually better than what we usually would expect it. So that generated savings over the course of this project. And the other thing in a left-handed sort of way, we built a lot of time into the project to come down here and come to meetings and do check-ins along the way, which we just quite frankly weren't able to do with COVID, and that accreted to a savings as well. But everyone adapted to a remote environment, so I think that our meetings were still effective, and we were able to obviously get the information that we needed along the way in order to produce this report. So in total, from inception through, actually I pulled the information today, with just over 700 hours of time from our office into this report. And keep in mind, this was your first report. So we started essentially having to do two sets of financial statements, one for 2018 and one for 2019 to get you to the point that you could report. So going forward, you wouldn't have that level of investment at all going forward. Now that there's some efficiencies in place, we know what to expect. All the work programs have been developed, the data requests are sound. So we are waiting for feedback from the State Board of Accounts on any changes they might have in the report. So far, the feedback has been productive, but nothing really pervasive to the information that we compiled. I know we'll have some changes to make, we always do. And when we do, I can go through with the auditor's office really what we submitted versus what was finally audited and explain the differences. So at this time, I want to open it up for any questions that you might have for me, but just be aware that we've been told the end of this month to have the audit complete, which means it will be available to you shortly thereafter through an exit conference. And since that report will look different than any report you've seen, I want to make sure that I answer any questions that you have about the audit. I think I'll probably be invited to the exit conference, so you may see me again at that time for those of you that attend that. Any questions for us?
Just a general comment. Foremost, thanks to the auditor's office for being as prepared as you are and have been on my time here. That certainly sounded like it yielded benefits to our taxpayers. With the submission of the GAAP financials, do you anticipate or how would you believe potential purchasers of bonds or investors of our debt would view the information you anticipate to get back?
Good question. So I know you just went through a process to issue bonds, general obligation bonds for 2020. Going forward, any bond issue that you do literally from October 1st forward, you can submit these GAAP financial statements to a rating agent, and they can consider that more holistically and use that to assist with their rating process. Now, I can't stand here and tell you that your rating is going to be improved, but generally speaking, the better financial information you have that's in a format that's more common, generally accepted accounting principles, it will have a positive impact on the rating as long as the underlying data is still solid.
Do you believe our auditor's department is positioned to maintain this without outside assistance on a go-forward basis, or?
We've talked about that. I've got a 3-year agreement here, and the plan was that by that 3rd year that we would be able to turn it over.
Okay.
And when we get to the 3rd year, we can talk about that. But based on what I've seen, a lot of it's going to depend on decisions that you make as well. Because they may come to you and request that if we're going to do this, we may need another person. So you're going to have to weigh those factors in order to meet those needs. And we can consult with you on that as to what would be, how that could work and what those qualifications might need to be. But sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions for us?
I have a couple. How does this thing roll out? Or is it in a public setting or?
So going forward, what'll happen when the audit is finished, they'll set an exit conference where the financial statements will be available. The time from the exit conference to when they're publicly available is dependent upon the State Board of Accounts process to get them signed and released. And I don't know historically how long has that been?
It's been within usually 2 weeks.
Within 2 weeks. So within 2 weeks of the exit conference, this would be available to post on your website.
Any further questions?
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, next item on the agenda will be our routine matters and consent agenda. We might have 12 items on there. Is there anything that anyone wants to discuss in more detail or pull off of the consent agenda? Not on routine motion.
I motion to approve tonight's consent agenda as presented.
Second. Motion by Rob, seconded by James. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes. All right, first item on our regular additional appropriation and salary ordinance and amendments, reductions and transfers is local health maintenance. Betsy.
Hi, Betsy Swearingen, Director of the Health Department. I'm just here to ask, these are rollover funds that we will be using to pay part-time, our part-time staff, our new parent medicine specialist, and our grants manager.
And that's why we're at it, how things are going.
Fine. We opened our testing site and we're averaging probably about, I would say about anywhere between 50 and 75 tests a day. And Yeah, that's going very smoothly. It's interesting. I never realized what a busy place the fairgrounds is
Sure.
year round. And I'm getting to meet a lot of people in Johnson County that I didn't know were at the fairgrounds all the time. So it's great. And we approved their plans and, for a bunch of people, there was a big event this weekend. So we worked well together. It worked fine.
Great. And how was the turnaround time on your tests?
About 48 hours, sometimes under that. So it depends now. If you got tested on Saturday, our courier didn't show. So those tests didn't get picked up till this morning. So they'll be a little bit later on that. But if the courier shows when they're supposed to, about 48 hours.
Then are you doing, if someone happens to positive, are you guys contact tracing this?
We do, well, it depends. The state does a portion of that contact tracing, and then we help the schools with all of students, and then we will help the state as much as they request.
On that real quick, Betsy, one of the questions that when you announced the testing sites was this was open to anybody really in the state of Indiana. Have you noticed percentage-wise county residents versus non-county residents that are asking for tests?
We've had people from all over,
Okay.
and we've had walk-ups, we've had mopeds come through, we've had bicycles come through, cars, trucks, vans with 6 people in them, and yeah, we've been, yes, all over the place.
Well, I'll make a motion that the grant, the rollover funds are sufficient money in the account. So I would motion to approve the request as presented.
Second.
Motion from Rob, second from Jonathan T. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Betsy.
Next item is the Commissioner, Mr. West.
I'm West Johnson County Commissioner. I won't go through the details of the request for the $322,000 unless you have some questions. I will give you an update though that the project's moving along way ahead of schedule thanks to this great weather that the Lord's been providing us. It looks like they're probably going to be done now, or expected to be done in November. Initially, we were concerned that we would get done until next year because of the delay in getting started, and we anticipated a certain amount of rainfall that we delayed. They're moving along. The section along Smith Valley Road is completed, and they're about a third of the way down the main creek, going to the First Lake and Willow Lakes, the next subdivision. And next week, the concrete trough portion of it, I know you're not familiar with it, but the concrete trough portion that's going to connect to what they're working on currently will start in about a week and a half, so they're moving along real good.
Is there any update on the loan portion of the?
No, I kind of gave Sheena a rest on that for right now. We're still going to look into that, and we have some time yet to try to get that done. I can tell you that there's still a lot of interest in paying the full amount by the residents. There are a certain number of them are interested in doing that. And of course, we can't give them a payoff number until the project's completed, so we know exactly what our final costs are and capable of doing the division thereof. But we're going to continue to look at this borrowing, the county being able to borrow money from a lending institution. Still getting, Rob's mentioned that his bank has done loans with other government entities. Talked to another banker and said the same thing, but nobody's gave me enough information back that I can take that and kind of see if it fits what we're trying to do here. We're going to continue to do that. In the absence of that, I'm prepared to work with some of our state legislators when the General Assembly convenes to see if we can get some recognition, or at least some House bill or whatever that would allow county governments to do exactly what we're proposing or trying to do here. It's a kind of a common sense thing. That sometimes fails, in government.
The only update I can provide on the financing piece is that it would be recommended at some financial institutions may recommend or require a legal opinion as to a legal opinion of borrower's counsel to provide that it's a legitimate course of financing it and so forth. So just a heads up on that. If you already haven't heard that.
I have gotten a heads up on it.
Okay.
You know my position on it.
Gotcha.
But I don't think I'd be able to provide this letter.
Oh, gotcha. Who's the contractor?
I forgot.
Hold on, I don't know.
That was it.
Oh, Monroe.
Monroe. Yeah, Monroe Excavating, I think it is, whatever, Monroe Construction. Been a while since I looked at that portion.
Is there any other questions for Mr. West regarding the Willow Lakes drainage project, or is there anyone else here that wants to speak for or against that project? I don't think there was anyone here to do that. I
No,
want
I
to
don't
make sure I
think
didn't miss
so,
on
yeah.
some residents or something.
Yeah.
In case they wanted to speak.
Oh, okay.
Appreciate the update.
Thank you, Ron.
So we need a motion to approve?
We're getting there.
Oh,
You
okay.
can't make it like.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd motion to approve the request as presented. We had lengthy conversation about this when it first was brought to our attention, and understand it's kind of a new, unique situation. And I know Ron's very much in touch with the folks at the State House on rectifying that language about where the funds must come from. So absent that, we made it, I think we had a healthy discussion, and I'd motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Rob, seconded by Jonathan. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is WIC program. Is Tracy here tonight?
I haven't seen Tracy.
The WIC program is on Zoom, but they haven't started the video or audio yet.
I'm trying. I'm here. Hold on.
Sure.
Okay. Hi.
Hi, Tracy.
Hello, everyone. So I'm here to request my fiscal year 21 items be appropriated in the specific line items that has been presented. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, I'm Tracy Smith from the Johnson County WIC program. Sorry.
Tracy, any changes in the administration of the program at the state level?
No.
No. Have you seen an increase in demand for your services in this period of time?
Yes. Our caseload has increased by quite a few hundred people.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? How many?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
How many people?
We went from 2,200 to about 2,400. I'd have to look at the most recent numbers, but a few hundred.
Thank you.
And remind me, being your prior liaison, maybe your current liaison, I'm not quite sure. But your budget is first approved by the state, and then it comes before us. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Does the request represent an increase over the prior fiscal year?
Let me grab that. It fluctuates depending on what type of projects I'm working with the state on. Last year it was 797 roughly, so pretty close. 800,000 mark.
with respect to your lease arrangement, are you secure in your lease through the next fiscal year, through the next fiscal year?
Mhm. Yep.
Any further questions for Tracy?
I will motion to approve the WIC program, item E3 in tonight's agenda as presented.
A motion from Rob, seconded by James. Is there any further discussion or any questions for Tracy? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes.
All right, thank you guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for what you're doing.
All right, next item on the agenda will be the DOCA grant.
Good evening, everybody. Joe Villanueva, Prosecutor's Office, here to talk briefly about the VOCA grant. That is a grant that helps offset a large number of the expenses that we have for the victim advocate who deals with domestic violence in my office. It's a pretty important part of what we do. It takes a lot of training and skill to get people to cooperate with us when they're oftentimes scared to do so. This is a grant we've had with my office for a number of years. We were fortunate enough to get another 2 years of secured funding through ICGI. You know, we always want to continue to try and seek these grants whenever we can to help offset the cost of the taxpayers for funding these positions. So what I'm here for today is just hopefully have you just approve that grant and help fund that position for the next 2 years.
Any questions for prosecutor on the grant?
I'll move to approve as presented.
Second. Motion from Mr. Ketchum, second from James Eisen. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. All right, supplemental adult probation. Here we go.
Yes.
I hate when they don't want
It's over. Or is it a different song?
I'm Angela Morris of Johnson County Probation, and Judge Nugent is here tonight in person because he is the creator of the reentry court program, and is over the countywide problem-solving courts also. He does have the support of the other two criminal judges, as do I in the request we're making tonight, which is to hire a new probation officer, which for the rest of 2020 will be established under the 2101 fund, which is a supplemental probation user fee fund. The reason for this request on my end is the growing number of offenders that are being modified into the reentry court program. We simply just I need another person to cover. We get referrals out of circuit courts, Superior Court 2 and Superior Court 3, after they have completed a purposeful incarceration at the Department of Corrections, and then they can go before their sentencing judge to see if they can be modified out onto the reentry court program, which I know he's talked about up here prior.
And I apologize, I know you tried to call me today. When we spoke, I asked about the possibility of this being grant funded.
So the next item that I'm up here for also is a grant opportunity that we took advantage of last year with Judge Clark and Brady Kuykendall wrote for it, the SIMS grant, the Sequential Intercept Model. So I looked into grants for mental health court specifically, and I didn't find anything that would solve our problem now.
What about, so how many people go through this reentry court per year?
Per year?
I mean,
Well, currently we have 26. We have had two, we've been in business for lack of a better expression, let's say 2 years plus 3 or 4 months. It's a 2-year program. We've had 2 graduates. We've had some failures that we've had to send back to the DOC for various reasons. But we have had some successes. We've got a couple people due to graduate coming up in a couple of months. So right now we have 26. And Nancy Blanchard, who is our administrator, has daily or every other day what we call touches or contacts with people, either by telephone, visit, go to some type of treatment program, work. It's a fairly intensive program. And the reason we're asking for an additional officer is right now at 25 or 26. We weren't sure where the saturation point would be, and it's taken 2 years to get here. But now we're just here to where she is. She's tapped, and she's getting calls. She's on call 24/7. She gets a lot of calls at night, which is fine. That's part of the responsibility and job doing it. But we're just at the point where she needs some help.
are there any user fees associated with this? Do they have to pay?
There are. We have help. I'm going to tap out to this kid. We do have user fees. At first, we did not, because when you first start the program, and our mental health board is kind of its real infancy stages, but you have to go through all kinds of certifications with the Supreme Court. And before we can collect fees on the program, you have to be certified. And that took a while to get there. Now we're there. And to be perfectly honest with you, about that time, the COVID hit. And a lot of people have lost their jobs, so some of the payments slowed down. But yes, we do have user fees that are payable, but to be perfectly honest with you, we haven't collected a lot of user fees. Some people are real good with payments to community corrections, and others are a little bit slower. But again, when you got a program of 25 people, it's like a horse race. You get some leaders, you get some middle of the pack, and you get some back of the pack.
Sure, so I guess my question is, could we get a commitment from you that a portion of the user fees will go to pay this salary in the future?
As long as we're not violating any rules in doing it, because we all know what different accounts can pay. I'm learning myself. I'm all new at this, which account can go for this and that, and we don't violate any rules doing it. I think that's more than fair.
Randy Kirkendall, Court Administrator.
You need some music.
Okay. Do you want him to say something?
No, we can't hear back here, so I'm sure they're having
Once
problems.
we did obtain this certification, we did obtain that this year for the reentry court. We were able to apply for the problem-solving court grant that was available. Well, we did apply successfully, and we got the capped max, which was $10,000, and we have that. We're using that for the program right now. So every individual that's on the team that's not county employed is volunteer. So all of the treatment providers, there's not any additional fee that we are expending for any of the team. And there's several treatment providers that are on that team that donate their time to us every week for a staffing. But the $10,000 that we did obtain, we're using for incentives, drug screens, any kind of program expenses, all of those hard costs that we are not using general fund monies for. So there was not a personnel line item for the problem solving court grant from the Supreme Court at this time, but because of the popularity of the problem solving courts, there's lots of them: veterans court, mental health court, drug court. We have at the county level, just the reentry court now, as Judge Nugent stated, we're working on a mental health court. And we see a lot of value in that, and we're getting a lot of support from the state to create those. So I anticipate more funding would be available, but right now we have obtained the only one that is available to us.
Right, so sure, yeah, and I think, the backup's not up here, but mental health is obviously a huge issue right now for a lot of aspects of the criminal justice system. And the problem solving courts, I kind of have a little bit of background in this, are just going to continue to grow. I think they're the way of the future, so all in favor of it. I want to make sure that we are not overlooking any type of funding mechanisms that would be available.
We want the same, we had that same goal because we wanted to grow and we want the same thing. I will just note that when this court was started by Judge Nugent, it was it Suzanne at the time, lent the probation officer to Judge to start and establish the program so that there wasn't an additional cost to see how we could do it and see
So you're
collaboratively.
saying is Judge owes back pay?
Yeah.
Yes, there we go. I don't have a
Proactive,
checkbook,
what date?
I don't have a checkbook with me, but I'll.
So luckily it was a collaborative effort, and for this one, it seemed to be successful, and I hope that the other ones that we're able to use this person for to try to start new ones has the same success rates as well. But obviously we will approach any grants or funding that we can get from all levels.
How often is reentry court in session?
We meet once a week, every Wednesday at 4:00, we have staffing every Wednesday at 3. Staffing involves, we sit in this Superior 2's jury room. Randy's there, sometimes Angela's there, Nancy's there. We have people from Centerstone, we have people from adult and child, we have one or two prosecutors, we have a defense attorney. We have some people from community corrections, we have a full room of people. Each week we go through the progress that each person's making, whether they've tested positive or not, if they're working, how their counseling and therapy is going. I mean, we sit back there and it used to not take much time at all, but now with 25 participants, it's taking quite a bit of time. So we're starting to chew up the entire hour, but you really find out a lot about what's going on. We've got some excellent service providers and just a whole team of people that they really care about what's going on.
And this probation officer will be devoted entirely and strictly to this position, or is there some crossover?
This position and then the start of the mental health court.
Okay, yeah.
What would be a estimated range on a user fee for it if there's an average case?
I would say, I mean, there are some who owe user fees. There's a monthly fee, and I apologize for not having it off the top of my head.
It's $50 a month.
Okay, $50. Thank you. I should have known that.
But it's not intended to be self-substantiating.
No, what we had planned on using, again, we've been fortunate enough to have some people donate some incentives to us for people, some gift cards and other things that make it a little bit easier, so the burden's not on us to try and find funding for that. But we haven't really had that much of an opportunity to collect and use a lot of the user fees. We finally got an account started. That took a little while, but we finally got it right. And the auditor was fortunate enough to help us with that, but it took a while because we had to be certified before they allow us to open the account. Okay. So, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Have you considered raising that particular court fee?
Well, no, and I'll tell you why, to be perfectly honest with you. Because most of the people that first start out in our program are either on work release or home detention. Home detention is $20 a day. And when you've got somebody making $15 an hour, if they're making $15 an hour, $20 a day is substantial. And what we don't want to do is put somebody in a position where they think between my counseling, my home detention, whatever else I'm paying, and the user fee on top of it, why bother? I might as well just go back to jail. Now, a lot of us don't think that way, but some of these folks, they're good people. They get to the point they get a little overwhelmed. And so what we didn't want to do is put people in a position where we just got a thumb on them financially to where they just give up. So the answer is no, but that's why.
Like I said, I'm in favor of it. I think I would kind of like to, maybe when you come back for budget hearings, have some type of proposal where I'm assuming there's no legal problems with it. But, you pledge, I don't know what the dollar amount would be per year back to fund this out of user fees, maybe a percentage. I realize that you have operating costs too that are associated with this, but maybe,
She currently reimburses salaries from her fee funds to the general fund, like at least twice a year.
Right.
Already.
This is going to be a new.
But it's the same fund.
What?
It's the same fund. that she currently pays out of is the same fund she's gonna pay this one.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So whether, as long as it's short,
Do what?
it's as long as it is short.
Could increase that.
Increase what?
Well, if we're adding a position and.
Whether she gets the fees and pays them directly from the fee fund, or you put in the general and she reimburses, moves the fee money to the general.
Okay, Amy says it's 6.5 dozen, so I'm gonna listen to Amy. Sounds like it's already being done.
The requested annual salary of the probation officer, is that a state mandated, starting salary?
Yes.
And does your request have an effective date? I don't see it.
October 8th, 2020. It's in the first paragraph.
Oh, now. Yeah, on that. I'm looking at my agenda. You said
Normally
there's
I
a
don't,
little asterisk.
I forget about that, so I wanted to get that in there.
Thank you.
And you have this position accounted for in your 21 budget. We're ready to be,
Yes, we will. It isn't
when
already.
we get there.
We'll get there.
Baby steps.
All right, any further discussion?
So this is item E5, correct?
Correct.
I'll make a motion to approve item E5 to be effective October 8th.
Second.
Motion by James, seconded by Jonathan. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, state opioid response.
This request is for a grant.
Well, if you don't mind to.
Oh, this is yours.
She can do it. She wants Brady Kirkendall, Court Administration. This is the sequential intercept model grant, which is listed on your agenda as the state opioid response grant. This is a grant that we received, gosh, we probably received it in November of 2019 now is when the receipts came in. Group of stakeholders attended a training last fall. The state offered a $60,000 grant if we could come up with a place where there was a gap in services. The team identified a gap in services at the jail for offenders being matched with services upon release to affect their reoffense rates. So the jail navigator position has been developed and it was ready to go in March, and then it wasn't ready to go any further. So we are just now ready to appropriate these funds in accordance with what we've received from the state. So all of this is grant money. We just need the appropriation. I will say that we've had to reapply for the second year of funding at the end of August 2020. I'm told that I don't have the grant award yet letter, but we do have approval for that for the second year. So this would be a 2-year funded position.
Great. Just curiosity on the title, jail navigator, how that broke?
We Googled it. It's also kind of a new thing that therapists like out in the community, we have seen some articles that were coming nationwide on therapists that were writing with law enforcement and kind of being right there, we're in crisis situations where they can connect people with services instead of the alternative. So it was already an established kind of position. We didn't come.
So would that be like a crisis intervention officer or?
That's specifically what the idea that we originally had was someone that was doing crisis work on the front end, with the team identified where our gap is in our community was actually on the back end. So if we can match people in the jail with services or treatment when they're in and have a plan when they leave, and they're already matched up with providers on the outset, that will have more likelihood for success. So this particular person will have screening offenders that are in the jail, those that are on the way out, like the level 6 that are serving executed sentences, match them with like insurance providers, help them apply for those benefits that they'd be available to them, as well as treatment options and therapeutic on the outside.
It's only opioid related.
The grant is opioid or mental health, so it has to have one of those elements.
And this is entirely grant funded, and the news that you just shared is that year 2 is in process or been approved, but not maybe just awarded yet.
The state, because of the COVID, they assured me that the second year was going to be awarded.
Okay.
I just don't have the grant award yet, and the 60,000 what didn't have to be spent in the calendar year it can roll.
Okay, great. So no general fund money.
Correct.
Very good.
Any further questions?
I think you guys already hired someone in that position, so it needs to be retro. I have a note, someone started August 27th.
Yes.
Yes.
What's that date? August what?
27th.
27th, okay. I will motion to approve the request 93.788 Indiana State Opioid Response as presented with an effective date of August 27th, 2020.
Second.
Motion by Rob, seconded by Jonathan. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Sheriff.
Good evening, William Burgess, Johnson County Sheriff. What we're looking to do is basically on the records clerk agenda, 7A, B, C, D, E, F, and 8, A, B, C, and D. The records and warrants process service clerk was paid about $5,795 more than the other clerks that we have at the Sheriff's Department. That was done under Sheriff Doug Cox when we had an individual leave. We never filled that position. An employee had left because of medical reasons, so we had some portion of money from last year and this year. Her replacement will focus more on the phones, reception, and act as a backup clerk. We would like to take the pay difference on that position and split it among the other clerks so that they're all even. We're kind of thinking, looking ahead for next year on the budgets, we will have that portion taken care of.
So I have a question. You have the 7 B, C, D, and E. You're requesting these annual salaries. Are we voting on that tonight?
Jim, this message is, question is to Jim on the salary study committee. Do these, probably harder to call from memory, but.
I'm looking up right now.
Okay.
I think we stay in focus with those. That was a conversation that we had when we met with our 2 council people for the sheriff's office. We're not trying to leave those parameters.
If they got the increase of the $965 or whatever, the requested annual salary, that's not consequence right now, is it?
So like, even though you put more money in the line item, we can't pay it until you approve the higher salary for the salary ordinance. So you have to do both.
On the salary.
Looks like the,
Sheriff, what was the math that on the $2,800, the $2,896 that you're taking from that position? What, in the original amount, I assume over the entire annual salary was $5,700. Is that just a prorated amount? Is that how that comes out?
I believe so.
No, it's some of it's from the 105 and some from the 124. It's
Yeah.
item 8.
8A,
Oh,
B,
okay.
C, and D.
Gotcha.
It's part 2.
Okay. So part 2, item 8, that's part of this same
Right, from
position.
the A, B, C, and D. Just really moving some funds around to take care of it.
You get some equality.
I'm sorry, what clerk, you got the records warrant clerk, what are the other positions that you're trying to bring into line?
All the other girls that are with it, it's probably the easiest way to explain it, short of our administrative assistant, all the other girls, to make sure they're in line and are receiving the right pay. Because we had a difference, if you remember when we had our conversations, we had some major differences because of their jobs and what they do. But this is the easiest way to make sure that they're all kind of taken care of fairly. And the original records clerk is not gonna have that. We're gonna have different items that will be taken care of this time instead of what they were doing last time.
Yeah, I think, if I remember right, the conversation that we had was, these positions, most of these are already at or above the internal, but we're not bringing people's pay down. So in order to get those who are below up to where the others are currently, this funding is necessary, if that makes sense.
It's one of those confusing conversations we have to table that one.
And it's not an additional appropriation in the sense that you're moving from other line items within the budget,
Not
right?
exactly.
Yeah. The personnel coordinator, which is identified as a new position, how did you arrive at that annual salary amount?
Keep bouncing down at the, give me just 1 second.
Yeah, I was kind of going between 7 and 8. Apologize. Just
Well, until now, we had, and I can bounce that into it, however you guys want to do it. I was going to try to take them different, but until now, we've had a merit lieutenant that has been in the jail as a assistant jail commander. We'd like instead to have just as a jail lieutenant. So that'll give us 3 jail lieutenants. We already have 2 in the jail. The new one, then moving a merit position to utilize that person as a training officer. The assistant jail commander surveying position would be a new one as part of the new jail staff. To be fully funded, starting at this first of the year. The position will be called the personnel coordinator, because unfortunately, we go through some personnel, we have to make sure they're trained. And it just simplifies that to take those tasks and separate them 3 ways. Because the number of the people that are in the jail, employees, it's growing every year. For the rest of the year, the pay difference is $12,350 and will be covered by money remaining from the jail cook, the lead cook position, where they went several months before they were hired. It wasn't that we were not wanting to hire somebody, but it was just finding people to fill those positions. The position will come out of the new positions we intend to ask for in 2021's budget to cover your year-round medical, and staff of new jail people. We will not fulfill the vacancy of correctional officer's position until January. We must just asking for the fund those to pay the difference in the rest of the year. So we're just trying to look forward and down the road to make sure that we have everything filled, to make sure it's going to be running smooth.
And just to give a brief summary of our meeting, I think we came to an agreement that we know that the jail, we're going to have to increase staffing as the expansion nears completion. So the sheriff, we have worked out a kind of a plan on what would be needed initially, and then gradually adding on as the sections of so that we're not bringing unnecessary employees on for 5 or 6 months before they're actually save a little bit in salaries. That made sense.
It does. I didn't follow you where these positions were at on the pay schedule, the conversation you had on.
So the $965 difference brings these positions in line with each other now, but they're all currently above the internal. But if we bring all of them to the internal, there's still going to be a because we're not bringing anyone down, a pay difference. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we're trying to get parity
Amongst
them before we.
But they're already above. They're already above, and they're getting a $1,000 increase. Right.
Essentially.
Yeah. Andy.
Andy Barnhart, Chief Deputy of the Sheriff's Office. Yes, that's correct. Remember, it's the internal midpoint. That's not the internal top end of the salary study. So in comparison still to some of the other clerk positions within the county, this is within line, and I didn't put those numbers on the notes, but so the problem is we had one clerk that was paid $5,000 more than the other clerks because of some things that were done differently years ago before this administration took over. So to balance that back out, the duties have spread out throughout the other clerks already over the past year and a half that this administration has been in place. And we're trying to make the salaries reflect that previously the one clerk made $5,000 more. Now they're all sharing that burden equally, so we're trying to even that out. And rather than with this new hire is going to have a little bit, not have $5,000 worth of more duties that they're going to have. So we're trying to bring that down and flush that out, even though we know that it's, I mean, we're not talking about a significant difference here, but just to get them all at the same level so we still don't have that disparity. It's a large difference between one person making a certain amount, and actually that person that would be the new hire is really going to be more of a reception position, a lot less responsibilities than some of the others. So we're just trying to even that out without reducing anyone's salary.
Right, to the budget net, there's a
net zero, correct? Because we're just all we're doing is shifting that one up and the
one
other
position to give increases to another.
That's where the 960 came from. It's those 5 other positions.
So essentially, once they do this, it doesn't look like any of those positions are going to see increases. They'll all be compared.
I can't remember when the former sheriff gave that money to split it out amongst two girls that worked in the office, but, you know, we did away with a complete position, an employee, and we're growing. And, you know, we sort of need that, and it's just kind of, we're trying to figure out every day, we're trying to look what positions or we move people to have the sheriff's department run smoother. And that's kind of what we're doing here because of the front lobby, and that person will mainly be over at the jail doing stuff. I mean, we're pretty busy at the jail right now. The numbers are going up, and we need to have that personnel there to help out.
James, I have a question for you. Is there parity then throughout the county with these positions also, or is this just, are these jobs just specific?
The jail, I believe, was one of the sheriff's department. It's, I believe the parity is in relation to other sheriff's departments.
In addition, obviously with the math, if you pull the one down, you're lowering that top end a little, and just, so mathematically, it's no difference on the overall median price.
But technically, we could bring that position down and leave that person down without doing the increases too, right?
Technically, yeah,
Could.
it's just don't want to, right?
I'm just thinking here in the middle before budget hearing, how it's gonna go.
Well, we're being good stewards, and we're doing a lot, and then I'll bring it up every time, but, I mean, we're doing more with our commissary money than we ever have. And I haven't approached the council for a lot of items, and I've taken it out of it.
So Jim, remind me or help me recall what the salary study committee's recommendation is for those at or above that internal midpoint. Is it stipend or is it?
$500 stipend is the recommendation.
So these folks would be getting bumps now and then the stipend at the beginning of the year if that recommendation flows through the budget process, correct?
Yes, yes.
Sorry to interject one more time. I think the idea though would be that this would be anyone that was getting a raise would not get the stipend is what was discussed at the last. So this 960 would not be 960 and then the $500 stipend. Those individuals, because they're getting a raise of 960 would not get the stipend.
And when would this start?
I think it's calculated just for like the next pay going forward to the end of the year.
Okay. Thank you, Andy, for that explanation.
I didn't remember that caveat.
He's on record now.
Yeah, okay. That's what I was gonna get some more.
I have a comment. I don't believe in the committee's proposal to the council, that it was ever mentioned that we would lower anybody's salary that was getting paid over the internal amount.
Correct.
Yeah.
This
This
is a new
is,
hire.
if you're talking, are you referring to
This,
lowering this
you
person's
had a
salary?
new hire, that's the reason you're adjusting the salary down.
It's not a new position, but
It's a new person, just a replacement for that. Yeah, someone's leaving that position. We're just, right now is the time to even it out for the girls. The only one is the personnel coordinator. I'm bouncing down to 8, where it would be retro 8, 13, and 20, because we've had that person in a position of doing. But it goes back. We still have the funds that are, we're not asking you for any more. We're just trying to make some adjustments from positions that we've had open of salaries.
And just for me to confirm, I think what I heard earlier, the two positions that we're gonna, that's basically funding the one increase to the personnel coordinator, the head lead cook and cook, those positions, those funds are available because those positions were unfilled for a period of time, thereby relieving that.
Gotcha.
But they've since been filled, and you would anticipate that continuing.
We're back right now where we're looking for another cook, so
Okay.
we've been, that position has been unfilled for a couple months now.
Gotcha.
So the sheriff's department was one of the kind of the oddballs out in the study because there was no comparable internal positions. So they went external. So where we're comparing the internal midpoints for the rest of the departments, theirs would be the external midpoint. But the majority of their employees fall above the external midpoint. So it's just kind of looked at a little bit differently. That's all we had to go off of, if that makes sense.
There were some challenges in the meeting, but we.
No, I was gonna just say that we have the ability now with the jail lit, or what we call the jail lit, to fund operating expenses out of that, not out of the general fund. But I don't want to jump to that yet, because I've not heard from Mike Reuter, or to know that even something that this body desires to do, to shift that expense away from general and move it towards lit. But that was my look of pain in my face, probably, that I just didn't know quite what to do. Andy addressed my concern or maybe question about getting the nearly $1,000 now and then potentially another $500 come January. So I'm comfortable with that response, and I would motion to approve items, well, everything in 7 and everything in 8, with item 8F, the personnel coordinator, retro to August 13th, 2020.
I have a motion from Rob Henderson.
Retro to when, August 13th?
August 13th of 2020.
I'll second.
Second by James. All right, is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
All right, community correction. I spoke with Jason today on the phone. He's not gonna be.
He's on Zoom, or was.
I am here.
Hey, Jason.
Hi. It's Jason Cranning, Johnson County Community Corrections. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, excellent. So what we are doing here is we have a separate line item fund for CTP. About 3.5 years ago, we decided to allow that fund to build up a reserve of monies so that we could put a position into that eventually and be able to have it be sustainable for at least 5 to 10 years. We have built up enough of that money now that we believe that we have reached that mass, and we are asking to be able to put the assistant director into the CTP fund and be able to have either the new line items or that line items transferred there. So this is not from the general fund. This is project income that we get from the DOC for hosting some of their participants on the tail end of their sentences while they're being reintroduced into the community. So that is our request today.
I spoke with Jason today, and he just reiterated that he was shifting from the project income over to this community transition program fund. Just shifting from one to the other.
Jason, it looks like there's about just shy of 151,000 of balance in that fund. So that's what you refer to when you say it can be so this position can be funded from that for a period of 5 to 6 years? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yes, we believe that at least that amount of time. It depends on how many people are actually in the CTP fund. But in years past, we have enough participants that we believe that we will be able to, with that reserve built up, be able to generate enough that it will be sustainable for that amount of time at least, and hopefully longer.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve as presented.
Second. Motion from Pete, seconded Josh Turner. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, auditor's office.
Pamela Burton, Johnson County Auditor. I have a request before you this evening for $15,000 additional appropriation into professional services. And that basically is to finish up with the GAP project, as he spoke of earlier today. We've spent everything in there that we had, thinking we would have to come back and completely match the original funds, but we don't. And to be honest with you, of this 15,000 pending State Board of Accounts fines, nothing drastic now for the next few days. I don't anticipate we'll use about 7,000 of that, and that'll get us through the end of the year.
Pam, how did that process go from your standpoint? We heard Dan's update
It went
earlier.
amazingly well.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you the response from the auditor staff that provide the information that was provided as far as, assets management, financials. He's totally impressed with what they did. And as he indicated, we were anticipating a $300,000 project, and we're coming in. He said 25%, I think it might be a little less than that. And my goal before I leave here in 2023 is to be a wash-free, rinse and repeat, and then submit it to an entity like Dan's company and say, okay, we've done this, now we're gonna pay you a fee to see what mistakes we've made. But that's a couple of years out. That's not possible at this point, but went much smoother, much better than we thought. First year project, there were a couple of small glitches, but nothing we couldn't get through, nothing that wasn't solved immediately. So.
I motion to approve the auditor's request as presented.
Motion by Rob, seconded by Jonathan. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Very much. All right. First item on other business will be the approval of an interlocal agreement between City of Franklin and Johnson County regarding allocation of paving costs for Graham Road.
Does everybody have their map? Okay. There is a 450-foot section of Graham Road that has not been annexed into the City of Franklin. So the City of Franklin did a paving project on Graham Road, and they're asking that we reimburse our 450 feet as is fair, because it is ours. But ultimately more cost effective to conjunct all the paving in that area at the same time, and honestly, from what I understand, has a better effect as well, because it's all smooth and done at the same time.
So this section right here,
The purple section.
the purple section.
Yeah, in
Okay.
between those two red lines.
So everything else around there is the City of Franklin except our little,
You got
is
it.
that going to get cleaned up?
We would love for it to. We'll see.
They probably don't want to take that on either.
I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but Luke is looking into it.
Okay.
The amount's roughly $15,000.
Correct.
you're asking for the approval of the agreement and then the funding? Was there a fund identified?
I don't know.
We don't know yet.
That would be Luke's part. I don't know what fund is coming out of it.
I have no issue with the interlocal agreement.
Does Ron have to sign this too?
Did Ron have to
Ron will
sign
sign it.
it? Oh, yeah, the commissioners already approved it.
That's all they have? Okay.
I'll pay for it, yeah. All right, any further discussion?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion from Pete, second from Rob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, how about a jail update? Wes and Mr. Walls.
I think what we're gonna hear is that they're gonna bring this project in 20 to 25% under budget.
Oh, I know.
Similar to what Baker Tilly has done.
No changes.
Thank you very much.
That would be great.
I'm just watching.
My name is Wes Harrison. I'm working as the owner's representative for the jail project. And I can report good news. We're making great progress. The weather being so dry, while it's not good for our yards, it's great for construction. And we are making very good progress. The medical area inside, renovation inside the building has been occupied for about 6 weeks, and they're thrilled to have the space that they have, especially compared to what they had before. So that's gone quite well. The Salad Port area that you can see on the north side of the building is up, and finishes are going in that space. It's due to be occupied, I believe, in February. We turned over to the user group. There's a renovation of the interior space next to the lobby that includes a new scanning room, body scanner room, and visitors video conferencing area that is nearing completion. Will be done towards the end of next month. There was some asphalt that was laid today, which is good. Hopefully it'll give the users some parking spaces back. The pod area on the west side of the jail is, if you haven't been by there in a while, I think you'd be surprised because the building is up, the roof is on. It's pretty much weather tight. They're leaving some of the perimeter wall panels out because the prefabricated jail pods arrive next month, and they'll be entering through the building and positioned in the building, but the slab has been poured, and all is well there. As far as the budget goes, we're right on budget, and the schedule is right on schedule, not just a little bit ahead. I have to say that the sheriff's staff, the sheriff and the staff have been fantastic to work with, because right now in the renovation part, we're all over each other, and they've gone out of the way to accommodate the contractors. The contractors have done a good job too of recognizing the type of facility that they're in, making sure that it's, they understand that it's very precise and their work is very necessary, and they've done a good job of working together. So hopefully within the next time I come back, we'll have the cells in place and be buttoned up for winter and do our interior renovations, and we're on schedule to be done about a year from now, towards the first part of October next year. So, any questions?
That's a great update.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Wes is, I know I'd have interest in touring the project to date as whatever state that would be, but not to interfere with the operations of.
We can work that in anytime anybody would like to. We can make that happen. Because, yeah, it's fine.
It'd be good if one of the pods could be set.
Yeah, by the middle of October, they will start setting pods. They're actually going to set those right off the truck, so they're not downloading them anywhere. They're picking them off the truck and setting them in place. So it'll be interesting to see that go in place, and it should be the way it's synchronized, it should be in place relatively quickly. So I know by the end of the month, that portion of the work is supposed to be done. So yeah, come over anytime, just let me know, we'll make it work.
I have just one other question. Does the level of cooperation due to the fact that the sheriff's department has guns?
That doesn't hurt it. That seems to get their attention, for sure. So.
You ever seen the sheriff shoot?
Well, thank you for your time.
All right,
Thank you, Wes.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Kevin.
Kevin.
You did a great job.
That's what I do best, stay and be quiet.
All right. So next on our agenda will be our fiscal plan update from Mr. Royer.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Mike.
Can you hear me?
That's good.
Okay, good. Good evening, everyone. We've been waiting on a critical piece of information as it relates to the budget, and it's the 2021 lit distribution. But before I get into that, I want to rewind back to the beginning of the COVID event and what was going on. I'm sorry, but can the host enable my screen share?
He's working on it.
Okay. There we go. Let's see, here we go.
Also, Mike, will we be able to access these documents somehow?
Yes, I believe Amy made you a copy of this page in particular. Now, I'm going to be coming and appearing before you on October 5th for a full review. This evening the intent was to give you an update on the local option income tax so you can move forward with your salary recommendations. And so, so we have the property tax growth factor, and that came within 0.1% of my original forecast. And now we have the lit distribution for 2021, and even broken down to the unit level, which I'm thankful for because I wasn't even anticipating to have that this evening. But I want to rewind back to the beginning of the COVID event just to remind everybody what's been happening with local option income tax. When the COVID event hit, the federal government delayed the payments for the April 15th income tax returns to July 15th, and the governor followed suit and did the same thing, and he delayed the income tax for Indiana from April 15th to July 15th. And so that was actually going to cause us some problems because of how lit is distributed in Indiana and what the Indiana code provides for and how they determine the distribution. So we've been waiting on that information because that was done by executive order. And then the governor later then issued another executive order that said, okay, we didn't intend to disrupt the collections of lit, and we want to be able to allow those collections that we're going to get in July to be part of our 2021 distribution. But before we get there even, I want to start just to refresh everyone's mind of how local option income tax works. Right now, the county has what's called an expenditure rate of 1%. Now you have the 0.2% for the jail lit, which is separate from this, but the expenditure rate is 1%. And in the last known year of collections is actually 2018. And that sounds weird, and I remind everybody of this every year. People file for extensions, and there are people still filing returns for 2019. And so we won't know the actual 2019 collections probably till sometime early spring this year. But the last known year that we have is 2018, and these are calendar. This is critical. These are calendar year collections numbers, and so that was up 5.58%. And for calendar year 2019, to rewind, calendar year 2019 was still strong. You know, it didn't have any of the impact of COVID in that period. So I am still forecasting that the 2019 collections will go up approximately 5%. I hope that's conservative because, you know, you look at these prior years, they were pretty strong, with the exception of 15, that wasn't great, but the year before it was almost 8%. So I feel like that's a fairly solid number. But as you can see then, as we get into that next year, that's when the rubber kind of hits the road and the impact of the COVID event starts to take hold, in that right now the entire COVID event is occurring in the calendar year 2020. So we're going to see probably a nice increase off of calendar year 19, but in 20 it's going to get pretty rough. But the interesting thing about this is, because of this higher estimated amount, if this collection number exceeds what they distributed, which it did, and the balance exceeds 15% of the distribution, they kick out this special distribution. And so for 2021, I'm actually anticipating that your special distribution is going to be higher than even this year's special distribution. And that sounds really strange. I mean, here we are in the midst of a COVID event and trying to figure out what kind of recession we're in and when we're going to come out of the recession, or when we're going to come out of the COVID event. Yet we're going to see a larger increase in 2020 in our special distribution than we even did in 2020. Now, I will tell you, this is still an estimate, and that's not the piece of information I've been waiting on. That information will not be made available to us until May. But I do believe it's important because it is something that I've always considered to be part of the budget process, even though the state doesn't recognize it yet. But I am anticipating a nice special distribution yet to occur in May of 2020. Now, moving over to this column, the certified distribution column, this has been my wild card. This is the one that has been so difficult to pin down over my career. It's fluctuated significantly over time, but it came in actually stronger than what I would have anticipated. But there's a good reason for that. So when the governor issued the executive order to delay the collections and then to delay the period in which the collections would be determined, he didn't just account for the delay of April. He allowed everything that was being collected in July and everything that was being collected in August 2020 to be put into this distribution. Now, I will tell you, in my opinion, that's good news, bad news. I mean, it's always good to have more money, but in my mind, it's muddied the waters, because it would have been better if we only received what we were due from the delay and not account for the just normal collections. This number is supposed to represent collections from July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, a fiscal year. This is a calendar year, but the distributions are determined based on what was actually collected in the prior fiscal year. The problem with that is this distribution now has 14 months of collections in it. Now, I will tell you, July and August are not strong collection months, but it is increasing our amount, which you would not expect, right? So if you rewind and think about July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, from July 1, 2019 to February, the end of February, early March, things were great. The economy was strong. Everything was going well. But the last 4 months of that fiscal period, being March, April, May, June, were not great. You know, we went to a hard shutdown and unemployment was soaring and did soar. But yet the collection period is showing us an increase of 6.3%. So what I'm trying to get data on, this literally just happened on Thursday this last week. I was actually only anticipating to get this number. I ended up getting not just that number, but also that number broken down by units, which is good. So when I appear before you on October 5th, I have your exact number now, but I will have it pinned down. But what I'm concerned about is that next fiscal year won't be a 12-month cycle. It's going to be a 10-month cycle. So keep in mind, 14 months, 10 months, and then we go back to 12 months. And so what I'm trying to figure out is, what does 2022 look like now that we have taken 2 months of the prior year collections and included them in our 2021 distribution. So I've reached out to the state, and I've asked for the monthly distributions. And again, I hope to have that on October 5th when I appear before you on the next time. But this is good news. Your budget is in balance for this next year. The auditor's office has included additional dollars in the budget to allow you to give raises, but you don't have to. I mean, it's just something you can always come down after. You can advertise and you can always come down, but you can't go up. But the auditor's office has put dollars into the general fund, and they have put dollars into food and beverage, health, and animal control to allow for raises if you so choose. But real quickly, and I'll share this with you again on October 5th, but I'm going to go to the summary page. Right now, need to zoom out, sorry. Right now, I apologize if this gets too small. Just to give you a quick glimpse of what I'll be presenting on the 5th, your budget on the general fund and food and beverage is in balance $1.2 million. And that is great news. That is great news. But as you can see then in 22, things are going to get pretty rough. And so you've heard me say this before, for those of you who've been on the council a while, local government is slow to feel the impact of a recession, and they're slow to come out. When we're going to live in the recession, when we're going to feel the real impact of the COVID event, is going to be 2022. 2021 will not be a problem. And so my concern is the following year. And I know that probably doesn't help you as you're trying to make a decision on, what should we include for raises for 2021. I apologize, I'm not helping you much because I just don't have a grasp yet of what 2022 is going to be. 2021, property tax is locked down, lit is locked down. We have fine-tuned your revenue estimates. I feel solid about 21, but what comes in the aftermath of the COVID event is really going to occur in 2022. Now I will also tell you, looking at your property tax collections, I've always shared with you, if you have a 50% cash balance in your general fund of your next year's property tax collections, that's a good cash balance. So in this case, if you had $8.1 million of cash in your food and beverage and your general fund, that would be a good cash balance. And I'm actually at forecasting you'll be closer to $17.2 million at the end of that year, if you don't add anything but what the departments have put in. So what you're seeing right here is exactly what has been submitted by the departments. Obviously, you're going to go through the process of budget hearings and hearing more about that, but that's where we are right now. And it looks rosy because we are getting a higher distribution in 2021 from the lit distribution. So I'm going to pause there and take some questions if you have questions.
Yeah, Mike, it's Rob. On that line item, I think at the heading says excess or deficit of revenue over expenses, and you had highlighted the next column over. It looks like it's -2 million. I can't quite read. What's the number?
2,354,951.
Yeah.
Amy has this entire fiscal plan. We didn't print it for you this evening because I will be going through each fund on October 5th. But if you'd like an entire copy of the fiscal plan, it is available.
I forwarded it to you guys this afternoon.
What is this copy here from?
That's that. I only put in one copy. So
Okay, this is it right here. So Mike, I want to make sure my numbers are correct here, because if I look at page 1 general fund, is that the page you're on right there? Is the page 1 general?
No, I'm actually on the combined food and beverage and general fund page. I look at it's page 22, and if you're looking at the electronic version, it's page 22 I'm looking at. The general fund looks a little bit better, Josh. It's in balance by $1.4 million, I believe, but it's because the food and beverage fund is out of balance that it's a little lower in the combined fund page. So remember, between food and beverage and general fund, we've been moving expenses back and forth between those two funds.
Could you show us the rainy day fund that council?
Sure.
Last year. And Mike, I'd ask, and we'll probably talk about this on the 5th, but is this something that would be good for us to do at this budget time to increase the rainy day budget?
Yeah, I would suggest that you wait to the end of the year. In any calendar year, you can transfer up to 10% of your total budget into the rainy day fund. And so, maybe in December, you would want to transfer some additional dollars out of your general fund where your cash balance is strong into the rainy day to kind of build that up. You are sitting at $3 million in the rainy day right now. We don't have anything appropriated in 21, but if you look at just the general fund, let me get there. If you look at just the general fund, I'm forecasting at the end of this year, you're going to be about $15 million. So again, you're well above, that cash balance of 8.2 million. Oops, I'm sorry. It's shooting around on me here. There we go. So I highlighted this so you can see regular lit, what it's doing in 2021 in comparison to this year. So you're getting a nice bump, but to 21, but then you can see it's 22 where we're going to play catch up when we're only getting 10 months of collections. And you can also see that, you can also see that the special distribution goes from 979,000 to almost 1.6 million, but then thereafter it almost disappears. So, you know, our regular distribution and our special distributions will start to dry up in 2022. And it's been really difficult to estimate. The state, as a conservative estimate, used a 10% decrease across the board in the 2021 distribution. And much to the surprise of many, you know, the counties increased. You increased over 6%. Hancock increased over 6%. Hamilton County increased 10.8%. But as I said, it's just misleading because of that collection period and what's included in the 2021 distribution. But Josh, I believe you were looking at the general fund page. And so the general fund in 2021's in balance, 1,420,000. But when you combine food and beverage, because the food and beverage fund is slightly out of balance, when you combine them, that's the 1.2 million I referred to earlier.
Can I clarify something? So the numbers that you're looking at is basically what all the departments put in. So they put in like internal salaries and stuff. Then I went through and just put in the current salaries. So whatever they're making in 20, I put in for this exercise for 21. So it doesn't include any stipend amounts that you guys may consider. So that's not in, right, Mike? I just had it in what I was going to advertise, which you took out. So these numbers don't reflect any kind of stipend. Is that correct? Mike, are you there?
Mike, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. Did you hear Amy's question?
I did not hear Amy's question. I apologize.
So I don't think that these numbers reflect any kind of stipend amount. Is that correct? That was the amount because they were undetermined of how much they were giving. So you took out the amount I was advertising. So these figures do not include any kind of stipends.
That's correct. This is not the advertised budget. These are the budgets, with the exception of those amounts, Amy, that you had put in as placeholders for potential raises.
Right.
I have taken those out.
Yeah.
So they can see a net number without those dollars in there.
So when you guys are looking at the full plan that I emailed you, just remember that doesn't include. So if you think they'll really look good, it doesn't include any stipends that you're considering.
Do you have an estimate yet, James, on the stipend amount, like a ballpark number?
Yeah, but I don't, email this amount.
Okay.
It was minimal.
But you're looking at just under 500,000 for the salary adjustments to get to the internal midpoint.
You remember what the stipend amount was?
Do I?
You remember what the stipend amount was?
I think Jim mentioned $500 a time or two, but
I think the total was in the area of under 200,000.
that would be coupled with the, I think it's around 470 plus thousand that we estimated to do the adjustments of the lower salaries to the internal midpoint.
Amy, what did you put in? Did you do anything with the elected?
For this exercise, I left them the same salary.
You know, I want to make one point, and this jumps out at me, and I just want to state it. And I never looked at, had anybody on the back, whether it's the council or the commissioners, that I think the elected bodies, the department heads, and even the employees, when you look at this budget and you know, everyone's been conservative, you know, even down to our employees, we're conservative, we're frugal. And the fact that, you know, we're going to have, projected to have a $17 million cash balance, $3 million rainy day, $20 million in cash, plus, you know, excess revenues for next year. Obviously, there's pain to come in the coming years, but I think the fact that we're in the position we're in right now is, I couldn't be more thrilled with that. I think that's very impressive. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a lot of issues that we have to get through in 2022, but you know, I think that deserves a thank you to everybody, because that's pretty impressive. I'm sure there's a lot of other counties and municipalities that aren't in the shape that we're in, and I think that's all, you know, for good reason.
Well, I agree with you, and I think it's going to help flatten the financial valley that we need to fill up some of that wood. It's a good point, Josh. Good point.
Now, look in the crystal ball and figure out how much of that you need in 2022. That's going to be the difficult part. Mike, do you have any thoughts on that right off the end? I mean, just off the handle, kind of on the fly.
Well, before last Thursday, I can tell you most units of government, the conversations I had been hearing is people were going to be pretty conservative in 21, and you know, that they wanted to do something in 22 when hopefully the rest of the world's coming out of the recession, you know, to try and sync up compensation with what's going to be happening, or at least hopefully happening with the rest of the world. And so, but I will tell you that it has also left people scrambling because these distributions have come in higher. Scrambling in the sense like, well, we've got this extra money now. What should we do? And so, as I mentioned, it's really kind of muddied the waters by giving us those extra 2 months, because it's hard to determine, you know, had that not occurred, you know, how much of a raise would we have given? So, but some of that conversation, I will tell you, has changed because people do have these additional dollars now. Now they are considering raises. Some are using it, to be real frank, considering one-time stipends, you know, to not make it part of the permanent base. I know those aren't popular. Some are saying, well, we're going to give you this stipend, and if we can make it permanent next year, we will make it permanent. But because of the uncertainty, we just don't know. You know, we don't know where the end of the COVID event is yet. So, you know, we're hopeful that something in terms of a vaccine comes out yet this year, but we really don't know where the end of all this is yet.
Josh, can I ask Mike a question?
Sure.
Hey, Mike, Ron West.
Hey, Ron.
On your projected shortfall in 2022, you kept saying because we're going to realize a 14-month collection in 2021 and only 10 months then. But how much of that lost revenue is subject to the reduced employment that we're experiencing right now? Are you factoring that in, or do you have an idea? And then also the $1,200 that everybody got from the federal government in conjunction with the $600 unemployment money, is that all taxable?
No, that's not all taxable. And so I would say, though, you know, Johnson County as a county probably weathered the impact of COVID maybe a little bit better than most. If you think about Elkhart County has a lot of manufacturing jobs, and when the COVID event hit, they went home and they were unemployed, versus maybe at Johnson County where many of them were able to go home and work. Not everyone, I'm not saying everyone was able to do that, but a lot of people were able to do that. So the impact of the COVID event is not equal across the state. It varies by county. So I'm hopeful that, you're going to do better than most, but we're still not seeing the effects of the COVID event hit our revenues yet.
I understand that, but my question was, of that reduction in 2022, how much of it is due, in your estimation? Or not 10 months versus 14?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ron. That's what I'm trying to get before October 5th.
Okay.
What I'm trying to get, I'm gonna go back to my spreadsheet here on Lit.
To give you an indicator, Mike, that our food and beverage collections were off maybe 10-15% for a month, and then they jumped right back up. I was really amazed at how rapid our food and beverage collections got back to normal.
No, I agree. That was kind of initially, right when the entire shutdown hit, that hit pretty hard, but things started opening back up, and of course, those fast food lines, you'd be shocked how much food and beverage tax comes off of a fast food line. I know in Noblesville, the Chick-fil-A's, they have 2 Chick-fil-A's there, and it's unbelievable how much goes through there. But Ron, going back to your question, I have built this 12% in here, but I'm not confident in that number because I've built some in there for both the impact of the COVID event and the delay and the 10-month factor. So let's say we actually jump 6% this year because of the 2 extra months. Well, that 2 extra months is going to go away, but then the impact of the COVID is going to hit too. And so where I came up with that 6%, just to give you some idea, is, I went back to 2008, and you look at 2008, the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, and it was about 6%. And so this isn't the same kind of recession that occurred back in 2008, but it is at least a starting point to have some basis for what happened back then. So I'm assuming maybe 6% decrease in collections due to the COVID event, and then the timing issue of another 6%. But I don't have the data from the state yet to share with you.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike,
I do think now keep in mind in 23, it's going to bounce back up because then we'll go back to a normal 12-month cycle. So again, just to reiterate, this was 14 months. This would reflect 10 months, and then we would go back to a 12-month cycle.
Mike, quick question for you. If you look at the combined general gadget, food and beverage, that page 22 that you were discussing, the total personnel services for next year is 19,503,000. Is that correct?
To get to that, Josh, I'm sorry. Yes.
So if we, just for the sake of discussion, if we have discussions about raises or whatever, it's going to be based off of that number.
Correct. And anything you add to this becomes part of the next year's base going forward.
I just want to clarify that.
Mike, it's Rob. So at this point, I'm gonna go back to the comment I made a second ago, you may not have been online yet. With respect to the operation of the jail facility, the permittable purposes of the jail lit, in addition to construction, is the operation of a correctional facility. This makes no assumption about operational expenses.
Correct.
In other words, you still have them embedded in the general fund.
That's correct, Rob. If you're able to reallocate expenses to the jail lit fund, that makes this picture better.
Is that jail fund money in our cash balance right now?
Shouldn't be.
Not, it's a separate fund.
So where's it listed?
Let's see, Ron. Let's see, jail lit. So here it is right now. So this is my anticipated revenue in the jail lit for 2021. And you have a debt payment of $4,725,000. Amy, correct me if I'm wrong though, there's an additional $800,000 that we're paying out of a fund that we put aside for interest.
Yes.
And so in a normal year, our debt payments are closer to the 5.5 million. Our 21 budget's a bit artificially low because of where we're paying the interest cost.
So Rob, is that what you're asking is in 2022, we moved that expense of operational expense to the lit? I'm suggesting it's an option that bridges that gap that Mike showed us earlier of on the combined page 22 revenue excess or debt or excess or deficit over revenue expenses. It could find relief there by shifting some of the correctional facility operations to this budget that we're looking at right now.
Rob, that's correct. So this even accounts for a drop in lit pretty hard in 2022.
See that, yeah.
And so beyond that payment, then there is some additional surplus there that could be used.
In one of our models or assumption scenarios, we don't call it, heading into the jail discussion was we kind of put a plug number of about 2 million of annual operations into this, coming out of this fund that you're looking at right now. So that almost covers the gap. Now, that's up to councils for the future to make that decision. But that is certainly part of the thought process was to bring potential relief to the general fund from that, if needed. Brilliant strategy, I would say.
All right, anything else for Mike? Do you have questions, or Mike, you want to stick around to our discussion? I think we're going to discuss some guidelines. Correct. Don't everybody speak up. Any initial first thoughts after Mike's presentation? First thought. Staying on track. Yeah, I don't disagree. I think anything that we do, this is going to be, of course, you don't want to be carried away. Did you want to maybe do an incremental phase on those positions? Bring those positions up to the mid.
Yeah, I thought, we discussed that the last time.
the other thing, you know, if the number, I'm not in love with that personally. I don't think it's okay, I don't think that, you know, sure, everyone may be happy if they got a side employee to do that. I get the feeling that it's not well received. I think we probably have the means to give a percentage increase if you wanted to do that. Just throwing that out there. Whether that's one and a half, two, I don't know, just a thought. You know, or a combination of an incremental increase and a stipend.
We could make it a dollar amount, and make it permanent. So it isn't just a second plus.
Stipend.
Well, have it be permanent, you know, not just this year. We'll get the same thing next year plus whatever comes next year.
But it would not, it would be given to the internal midpoint for those who are below us, the percentage. Getting 50% percentage.
Yeah, I'm thinking do both, honestly. One, yeah, all those that are getting raised up get a raise. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't want to get too off track, but it looks like we have
Some would be probably some of the raises would have been under the percentage amount that was able to get 2% rate to the 1.25%.
Mr. West.
The salary study committee, the goal, I felt like, working with Jim and Pete on that, was to take the salary wage study that you guys paid 40,000 for it. I'm not sure how much we paid for it. So the whole idea was to take that and try to utilize it, since I had only spent the money for it, and they produced it. And that's where the idea came to start at the lower level and try to at least bring those people into some kind of parity as far as equal pay for positions. And then the thought was, and I'm not supporting one thing or another, I'm just getting to our discussions. Jim's idea with the stipend was that when you do a percentage raise, disparity starts to grow again in these salaries, and that's what they were kind of looking to avoid, is to try to either avoid or minimize that growing disparity where 3% of 30,000 doesn't equal 30% of 50,000, obviously, and you get that wider spread. So that was the thinking, to use the salary study information, look at the midpoint, the internal midpoints, try to do something with the lower levels, and then try to determine what you would do for those who weren't going to be affected by that. So that's kind of how we left it at that time. And like I said, I'm not supporting one idea or the other. That's for you guys to decide. But that's how we came up with that. And that's how the thought of the stipend came about.
I think the stipend, I think the only good thing about it, from my standpoint, is if things get worse. Which they will. Yeah, and, well, worse to the extent that it gets worse. Where we can't look into a crystal ball. So, the thought of being conservative, I think the stipend is a conservative approach at this time. I do agree with you, Josh. We have the money right now, but looking in the crystal ball in 2022, and who's to say it's going to get better in 2023? And I don't want to be chicken little council here, but we need to know before we make those decisions.
Those times are fun. Me and Ron has been here before, and some of those lean years, they're not fun.
We did nothing.
But
We had years we did nothing.
yeah,
salary.
So I think Jim said, just kind of stay the course. That's kind of where I'm at right now. Anxiously await the October 5th complete review and get a deeper dive into the plan that was emailed to us. But I like the objective of what the salary study committee achieved. We were trying to bring people who were doing similar jobs within the county under different departments into some level of parity. It wasn't necessarily that someone making 50 who didn't have, in Mon's example, someone earning 50,000 a year for a job that was different from someone earning 30 to try to bring those people into parity. It was the parity within job description and responsibility. And that's where I think the committee did a nice job on that piece of it. The stipend is lesser preferred. I understand. I've been on the receiving end of those before, and they are lesser preferred, but it's still something to keep in mind that it was given to you, or however you want to phrase it. And then, the federal government did step in and issue stimulus as well. So it was something that's completely outside of our control, whether we're going to do that again, at what level, if they do it, and all that. So I think we're in a very solid, to your point, Josh, our financial condition is solid. Our financial condition will remain solid in those 2 or 3 years that might went out past 2021. Basically, if you just base it on cash on hand. And there's some pretty aggressive 12% drops in there. So the chicken little aspect of it, 12% is damn near chicken little in a way. And I'm fine with looking at managing around that. So I think we've always had cash on hand with my time here to make those salary increases to bring people up. It's just been the decision not to. And I'm not pointing fingers at bodies or previous people or anything. It's just we chose not to deficit finance those with cash on hand, but rather have a balanced budget and try to address it in other ways. So we're fortunate to have options, is how I look at it. And we'll get into that more on October 5th, I'm sure.
Now the $1 million question we want to do about
Just a reminder, people can hear you in the back.
we talked.
Well, my first thought is, as much as we see the disparity of elected official pay compared to other counties, you can't, for me personally, I'm not going to increase elected official salary when everyone else is getting $500 stipend. You want to talk about a stipend or whatever for an elected official, that's one thing, but I just can't see. I can't see taking those on at this point. I think that's a messy game.
Yes, Doug, there's no guidance given by the survey, like you were given. So it's
And I agree. I think you look at official salaries, a lot of them, they're underpaid, out of whack, all of what you want compared to when you comparison to the county. And I totally agree. I wouldn't have a stomach to tackle it right now. But that's just me. Whatever the list of the rest of the council will be.
That's a tough one. Jim, I don't have an answer for you right now, or at least any thoughts to share about that on my side. I still, looming behind us is that whole I-69 expansion infrastructure dollar amount and how we're going to deal with that in a year or two. So while not only could it maybe be perceived as unfair to bring elected officials to a level of parity, but then you know, to go to the taxpayer in general and knowing that there's going to be something different down the road that's even a bigger bogey than what we're dealing with right now. So I don't know. I just don't mean to walk or be on the fence. That's where I'm at right now.
There's no doubt that it's a legitimate concern, you know, it's a legitimate issue, legitimate concern. I don't think when you talk to employees and ask them or whoever else, I just don't think that's not fair. I think that at minimum, we should consider affording the elected officials. We can exempt ourselves if we usually do, at least the stipend for the rest of the employees. I would think that would be the minimum, probably do that. We're looking at it. Right at 20. So, 20 times 500.
$20 being the number of elected officials that every year. Okay.
So, I mean, if we're just going on what we had, which is the average, council was by far so the average council salaries the county's given was $17,000 versus ours at $9,000. Then have coroner 41,403 versus ours 26,877. Auditor is roughly $10,000 under. So it gets us.
You know, if we want to tackle those individually too, I mean, obviously the coroner is a big one. Jumps out of me. That seems to be locally undertaken. You know, I'm happy to take a look at that on an individual case by case basis. I think that'd be easier than across the board.
Right, and I'm in agreement that sometimes even though it's bad timing and maybe leaves a bad taste in your mouth, doesn't mean that you don't move forward and do the right thing. So I would agree, if we would come to some sort of middle ground on this, I would like to try to make some of these right. There's always going to be discontent with whatever decision we make. It's a step in the right direction.
From a guidance perspective, you know, it's a small enough number that I think we can tackle it at budget time, right? You just have to have the number high enough. Or advertise enough. You have any thoughts on that?
I was gonna advertise $1 million in general fund, 500,000 food and beverage, 10,000 health, and 5,000
I mean, is there any precedent, to your knowledge, or, and this for Ron or John, anybody who's been there, done that, of addressing salaries, the 100 series in over a 2-year plan? I mean, I understand we can't budget appropriate, but just developing a 2-year plan that we would adopt in one budget, and then the next year it's already done and baked in and not negotiated. It's just basically seeing a good year and a bad year. Can we try to address it a little bit each year, but make a commitment to the employees? Is what I'm trying to get at, to show the employee. Is that ever happened to your knowledge?
Not like everybody, but I know years ago, like there was a commitment with some of the judicial or probation, they were phased in. They had like their own like step with their court reporters and something kind of commitment at one time. So I think of it.
Rob, I think the problem with that would be the bodies have been sitting up here. And we're also going into a couple of years, so big promise.
I think what we did last year,
I'm sorry, we're getting complaints on Zoom.
Pardon me?
Complaints on Zoom.
Okay, thanks. The spirit of what we did last year with Corner was to give them half last year and half this year. So in response to what you were asking, Rob, I think there was a consensus that we will need it for anything to stone.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Why we get things mixed up. But yeah, it is tough, but this is something that, in all fairness, that we've been talking about for a long time. And I know that we're coming up on some rough years, but we've made good conservative fiscal decisions that led us to quite to the comfort zone or the reserves that we have now, and I think that we can easily do what we've discussed and not put us in a position to fail 22, 23, 24.
Good. So just to kind of reiterate, make sure Amy has it, will of council, what everyone stated, is that we would bring in your the salary committees, their lower pay positions, and bring those up to midpoint, or the internal midpoint, and that we will continue forward with the $500 stipend. And we will tackle the elected official salaries at the hearings.
Yes.
Anybody else have any additional thoughts, questions?
Should we ask the elected officials to make a recommendation, or are we just gonna tell them status quo and we'll decide for you?
No, I don't know. I think we've got the numbers in front of us.
I guess I look at it, if there's somebody that wants to make a case, let them make a case to us. I'd rather than just assume, a certain way. But, they're elected also, and they're
I think one condition I would like to add, just to save the heartache, is this is just me. I really am not interested in. We always have one or two that will come and want to give any raise that they give to their employees, which is commendable. But I don't know if this is the year to entertain that type of gesture when we're trying to bring some parity to the scale.
I agree with that.
So just credit raises across your employees.
Right, good.
So what I'm hearing, so they next two of the budgets, they've already put in their 2, 3s, and 4 series. They put in the internal midpoint up to that amount, whatever they, some didn't know that amount, some did. So through this exercise, I basically put in their current salary. So that's what you guys want them to leave their current salary in the line item. The stipends will be budgeted in another place.
We talking those who are already at or above the?
Yes.
Yes.
So really, there should not be much change to whenever they go in and do that from what I did for this exercise. Now, I am advertising high, so changes can be made.
Yep. Perfect. Anything else before we get to October? Amy, you good? All right. Anything else?
Could you confirm the dates for the additional?
We might be able to, unless Amy has those dates.
October 5th, 7th, and 9th at 8:30.
Anything else?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.